Hi guys, so today we're going to go over discontinuity and zeros of a rational function. So discontinuity we can find by setting the denominator equal to 0 and solving for x. Graphically, a discontinuity will be a hole, a point where the graph is no longer continuous. So there is an open circle there. That's what notates the hole. Um, Whereas the zeros of a rational function are when you change y to 0 when you solve for x. So zeros are pretty much what you've been doing for all of algebra. It's when you solve for x, just different ways to say them. Other vocab for solving for x, the x values when you solve for them are zeros, x-intercepts, roots. So just know that these words are interchangeable. And starting off with number one, I'm going to just find my discontinuity first because it seems simple enough, right? You just set your denominator equal to 0 and solve for x. So for my discontinuity, I'm going to set the denominator equal to 0 and solve for x, subtract 5 on both sides, and x will equal negative 5. However, if you also look on the given graph, the point of discontinuity is a hole, which is an xy point. So I can't just plug x back in because, again, if I replace the x in the denominator with negative 5, it would give me a denominator of 0. So just keep in mind that all we've solved right now for the point of discontinuity is the x value. We will get to the y value when we solve for the 0 as well, and the way to do that is to simplify. So simplifying rational expressions were in another video. So if I write this rational expression out, 5x squared plus 26x plus 5 all over x plus 5, the way to simplify is to try to divide out. The only way you can divide out anything is if you can factor it out. So in the numerator, I have a quadratic, so I'm going to work on factoring it. And I'm going to take 5 times 5, first times last, which is 25. So I need two numbers that multiply to be 25 and add up to be the middle number, or b, which is 26. List all the numbers that multiply to be 25 and see which one of them also adds up to be 26, and that would be 1 and 25. And over each one of these two numbers, you put down a and x. So that would be the first coefficient and x. And from here, you reduce if possible. If it's over 1, there's nothing to reduce. However, here in the second fraction, I can divide each one of these by 5. So this would leave me with x over 5. So how I would write this is the first fraction is the first parentheses. So 5x over positive 1 means my first parentheses will say 5x plus 1. And the second fraction, x over positive 5, will say x plus 5. And remember, you have that denominator, so we're going to bring that down as well. And one thing to note, if you're ever unsure about your factoring, you can always FOIL or distribute, and if it is correct, it will bring you right back up to the original expression. So you can always check that. But we have factored it, and it is correct. So if you can factor it out, you can divide it out. So what this leaves me with, when I simplify this, is 5x plus 1. Remember that this is what f of x equals to. So now that I have my simplified expression here, I'm going to find the 0. So to find the 0, again, you set f of x or y to 0, and you get equals to 5x plus 1. So from here, I'm going to work on getting x by itself. I know you guys prefer x on the left side, so if you want to move 5x plus 1 to the left side and set equal to 0, by all means. I'll be working this way. So I want x by itself. It's on the right side. It's being multiplied to 5. Add it to 1. So I'm going to get rid of the adding first by subtracting it. Both sides of the equal sign. I'll get negative 1 equals 5x. And x is almost by itself. It's being multiplied to 5 on the right. So to get rid of it, I would divide both sides by 5. And from there, my 0, or my x value, is x equals negative 1/5. So just know that x equals to negative 1/5 is an actual point. You would find the y value, of course, which would be 0 on the graph. So we have the xy point because a 0 or an x value, you solve it when y is 0. So the point is negative 1/5, comma 0. But usually in the questions, they will only ask you for the 0, which is the x value. However, I'm pointing out that you will have a point because remember, we never found the y value for the discontinuity. So remember, the x value was negative 5, which means to find the y value, you plug it in. Again, we couldn't plug it into the original equation because it would give us a denominator of 0. So we plug it into the simplified one. So taking a sidebar, and I know this is a little all over the place, but I'm going to plug it in over here. So 5x plus 1. I'm going to change f of x to y. Y equals 5x plus 1. So I have 5 times my x value of the discontinuity, which is negative 5, plus 1. So y equals negative 25 plus 1. So signs don't match, which means I subtract and I take the sign of the bigger number, and that gives me negative 24. So from there I have the 0 as well as the discontinuity. All right, guys, I hope this helps.